Hello, everyone. Blessings. And tonight we have another paranormal guest for you. Um, they go by Sinister Sisters. They are a paranormal team. They are bound by sacred sisterhood based on curiosity, compassion, and intuition. The mission is to explore the mysteries of the unseen with open minds and grounded hearts, honoring the spirits, the land, the histories, and the energies that they encounter together. Um, Tonight, I have my spirit sister, Medium Red, with us. Hello.
Hi, sister. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
And we are going to bring up Rachel from Sinister Sisters. Hi there. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, great.
Doing good. Thank you for coming on, Rachel.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks for having me.
So, how long have you guys been doing the paranormal as Sinister Sisters?
Going on our second full year. So, yeah, relatively short. I was a part of another female paranormal team. I was on that for a couple years, and then I split off and started my own kind of with my best friend. So, and then we've expanded on that team to make it 4 of us instead of just us 2. So, yeah,
Awesome.
we're growing slowly.
That's great. Now, so you're not actually real sisters, you like spirit sisters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, right. That always makes it a little bit better too. Just,
It
have
does.
sisters you want. Not by blood.
Yes, exactly. And, it's kind of like when Jennifer and I first met each other, it felt like we've known each other for lifetimes. So it was just kind of an immediate sort of like soul recognition where we're like, and we called each other from the very beginning spooky sisters. And so then it just kind of like everybody uses the term like spooky. And so
Yeah.
we were trying to find something that kind of lended to that same spirit, but wasn't quite spooky. We made it a little
So how did I guess you could say the three of you first get started on doing the Sinister Sister paranormal investigations?
Well, like I said, from like me coming from another team, I used to come into Jennifer and I work in our normal 9 to 5 jobs in a dental practice, and I had hired her on to do insurance, and I would come in, after the weekend, and she was like, "Okay, tell me what adventures you had," and I was kind of like, "Well," and we would just talk about at lunchtime. We would talk all about like, all the paranormal investigating that I was doing and what kind of evidence and things that we came upon. And she was like, "Well, I'd love to go sometime, with you guys." And she came on with the other team. She came, I think it was twice that she came. And after like her first experience, she was kind of hooked. It happens that way. And I mean, she will never forget that very first location that she went into, because it was a good one for me too. Sometimes we just feel like you get into a certain spot, especially with your like the energy you're supposed to be meant to be with, like, and everything just gels, and then like the activity just like ramps up, and we get like a lot more. And so we've kind of like surrounded ourselves with those people, the people that, we mesh really well together. And then the activity just kind of follows that.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. What is one of your favorite places that you and your sisters did together that you just like, oh, I want to go back again because it was so intriguing?
Gosh, there's quite a bit of them. I would say I really personally want to go back to a location. It's here in Tennessee where we're at, kind of more eastern Tennessee. It's called Harriman Hospital because I had an experience there with a group that I was kind of investigating with, but we got like it was probably the best, like what I would call a disembodied voice that like just the loudest and clearest, and we caught it on, like we were recording with our phones and I caught it on my phone at the same time, and it's just like just as clear. And so, of course it's like one of those locations that just just intrigues you even more. It's kind of like instead of answering the questions, it's kind of like it opened the door to a lot more questions to be asked.
Love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a former hospital, so it definitely felt like those energies were still there. In fact, when we heard the voice, that's what we were in the middle of doing an Estes session, and one of the investigators was lying on like the last hospital bed there was in this room, and I was sitting with her friend and we were talking, and I said it really just feels like we're in the space of doctors and nurses working all around us. Like it just had, like, you could just feel that. And she said, I agree. Like, I feel like there's a doctor here who continues to think that we're in its way, they're just trying to work. And I said, yeah, that's exactly the feeling I get. And then that's when we got a voice that just clearly said, I see you.
I love it.
We were like, it just was like, it was crazy. And it wasn't until later that we actually thought, well, maybe it wasn't saying, and in fact, you're in the intensive care unit. So the ICU, instead of, we were thinking, oh, it's saying it's visually seeing us in the right way, because that's the way we really felt. But then we were like, maybe it was, we were in the ICU and they're trying to say, hey, we're just trying to work here. We're in the ICU, get out of the way, So it was interesting. It definitely, like I said, brought up a lot more questions.
Wow.
That's awesome. When you capture those moments, it's like why we do what we do as paranormal investigators. So that makes sense. I love it.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably why we get into it in the first place, because I know, at least for me personally, I had experiences when I was a kid that just made me want to know more. And I think that getting disembodied voices, or EVPs, is just like one of those things that you're like, how can I explain this away? There's like nobody in the room. This was a male voice. There were no men present. There was 5 of us. And the other members of the team were on a clear opposite end of this humongous hospital. And we radioed them right away and we're like, where are you? And they're like, we're all the way over in radiology, and we were upstairs on the second floor in the far opposite end of the building in what they called their continuing care unit. So, it was kind of like, how do you, explain those things away? You really can't. They become harder and harder.
That's awesome. It's really cool. So as a question for you, what is that, like the most compelling piece of evidence you would say that you've received over the last 2 years? Or is there maybe another one that's even more compelling?
I think we get a lot of evidence that I think more so in the audio realm that I would consider to be compelling. Very similar, but I think that, some of the others that we've captured actually have had like a full sentence come out. There was one at that one of our local locations that we go to all the time, plus one of our team members. She's the executive director of this historic home in Gallatin, Tennessee. And at the same time, we got like this full sentence where this man, who we believe was one of the former owners of of the historic home. He said basically, because we were in there, of course, investigating, and it was probably close. It was like after 11, maybe close to midnight. And he just said the full sentence on EVP was, "The children want quiet." And we were
Wow.
like,
Wow.
when we heard that afterwards, we were like, wow, it kind of just like solidified like a lot of what we were feeling at that time. We were feeling like that there definitely was like, we're in like, not where we're supposed to be. We're in like, we were in what they call, I guess they call it like the office. But back then it was like the judge, he was a prominent judge. And that was where in the 1800s, like they had like that was the men's parlor. That's where only the men would be in. And we were like, are we as women, are we not supposed to be here? Are you not okay with this? You know, we were kind of asking all those questions and kind of feeling like that was the sentiment we were kind of getting.
Experiencing, yeah.
Yeah. So when we caught later on, when we reviewed the evidence and we caught where he said the children want quiet, it's kind of like, all right. I guess we were kind of feeling right. I think that we definitely were picking up that it was more than likely the judge there who is, and it seems like, and it's the question we often ask, that is like, are they living their lives on another timeline adjacent to ours? And, you know, because it seems like they're just going about doing their own thing, right? And
Mhm.
we're there and we're kind of like, they're like, what are you doing here? And we're, you know, we've got that quite a bit.
Wow.
That's like you brought up like about whether being, you know, as a female being in the right location at the right time, you know, type of thing. I experienced that too as being a medium when I was in Virginia City and at the WashU Billionaires Club. And although I can see and hear, I mean, I can't think of his name, Mackie, I think is his name. I saw him when I walked in and it was a tour and the same situation where he literally walked up to me and said, women are not allowed to be in here. You need to, and he used some explicit, you know, some words we're not going to say, but basically telling me to leave. And I was by myself and I walked over to my husband and stood next to him. And he came up to me again and said, that's not what I said. Women are not allowed in this club. And so it was interesting that, you know, from the standpoint of, like you were saying too, it's like they're going about doing their daily business. And this is out of the ordinary. No woman would be in that particular location in his mind in that time frame. So it's really interesting. We still deal with some of that, you know, in what are they called, inequalities, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for their time period, I mean, that's what women had their own parlor, you know, and they would
Right.
expect men would be in that. And so that's kind of why they were feeling that way. And also for him to like say the children want quiet. We have heard in that at another time we investigated the same house and we had a group of people with us then, and we all heard what sounded like children running around the outside. And we, in fact, like my husband, who was with us at the time, he opened the door to go out there to see if he could find children anywhere, because they sounded like we could hear their, like, you know, when they're running around, you know, just playing. And we heard them playing as day, and people were like, there's like nobody out there. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so we were like, what the heck? You know, it was so loud there. And so it kind of like, you know, after going there so many investigations, it's kind of like you start to piece together the puzzle of like what's really happening in a location. I think it's worthwhile definitely going back to, you know, spots that not just, I think one time you can't get an overall feel for who's there and why.
Yes.
There's so many different, I think, different times there's different layers that happen too.
That's exactly correct. I was just going to say that to you as well. I mean, we have a location in Oracle near Tucson that we'll go investigate. I'm also part of an all-girls team as well. and we'll go to a place called Acadia Ranch. And I was actually just talking to somebody else that was another team that went there, and they were asking me about this little girl because they're like, there's no historical records of this little girl. And I'm like, but there is a little girl there. And they're like, we've never experienced that. And I said, well, you definitely have a little girl there. So at different times, you have different layers. So you can get different entities and different people coming in through. So
yeah, I believe that's the case because we've seen it at even different properties. Like we've investigated Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary.
so cool.
Yeah, and that has had many layers to not just the building, but the land itself. I mean, the land was Native American initially, which, there are a lot of locations throughout the U.S. that were Native American at one point in time, but this was definitely known to be one of those areas. But then they also had Civil War happen on that same land. And then eventually it became, prison that a lot of the prisoners actually helped build the prison. They mined there and they ended up building the prison that actually imprisoned them. So there's so many different, like multiple layers in that building and on those grounds. And people have seen over the years where they've seen Native American spirits or Civil War, as well as, all the way up to before the prison closed, which I guess modern day, I guess they would call that, spirits. So,
That's really cool. That's really neat too, to experience all that.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
What's one of the places that you really would like to go to?
That haven't been before?
You haven't been?
Oh gosh, I've got a lot. I've got so many.
The bucket list is tall.
Yeah, I think some of them, I think more notorious locations I would love to get to. I would like to go Trans-Allegheny, and I would, and Eloise Asylum is another location. Eastern State Penitentiary. Yeah.
Those are good bucket list items. Yes, for sure.
Another one for me is like even as simple as the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there. Yeah.
Chrissy's been there.
Yeah. I've been there. Got a little story, but I won't get into it. Right. But yeah, it's interesting. It really is. So
Is it? Yeah. Did
yeah.
you pick up anything there?
We also went to the graveyard too to see the graves and everything, and left some coins and little flowers for Lizzie and Emma and Andrew, and so yeah, it's nice. If you go to the house, you have to go to the cemetery.
Okay.
It's like
the white line
combined. Yeah, it's nice to go to the cemetery at dark. It's about the best time. So,
Yep. I would agree with that.
yes.
Stanley Hotel would be another one to add to the list. I would love that one.
Yeah.
Yep. That would be amazing. It's on the list.
Yeah. The long list.
Yeah, Myrtle's Plantation, St. Augustine Lighthouse.
Yep.
I know the list is long.
So, how old was you when you first had your experience? Because I think I saw something where you was like 10, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was indeed somewhere around 10 years old. My grandfather had recently passed, and he was probably the very first person, or that close to me at least, that that I knew that had passed away, like that at that young age, like that I could remember, like being there at his funeral and seeing an open coffin and all that. So yeah, it was actually in his and my grandmother's house that I saw him after he had passed. He was just kind of standing in the front room of the house, looking out the window. And, I was spending the night, which I did quite often, especially just staying with my grandma. That was one of my favorite things to do when I got to go spend some time with her. And so, I came out one morning and saw him there, and, I was like, what am I seeing right now? That's what I was running through my head. And all I did was like, I just yelled for my grandma, and she's like, what, what's wrong? And I was just like, somebody's in the living room, and she takes a look out there and she said, it's okay. It's just grandpa. And I went like, I was like stunned, but she made it like, which I think is the best thing she could have done, is she made it completely normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
That is awesome.
And then we had a little bit of a conversation where she's like, he comes to visit me often, and I'm just like, and then she talked to him and she said, Grandpa, she's like, you're scaring Rachel. It's time to go, and so then the only way that I can describe it is he sort of like phased out, if that's a way to, but just kind of like diminished nothing. It was just like, yeah, it was pretty crazy, but that definitely springboarded my interest for sure. And then I've had more experiences since then. I had another as a teenager where I was at a friend's house, and her parents, it was her dad, and she only visited him on the weekends. She lived with her mom, and she would visit her dad and her stepmom's house. And he was telling the story of when she was a little girl, and that she had an imaginary friend that she would talk to all the time. And they didn't believe, she was adamant that it was not imaginary, that it was real, that he was real. And, of course, like adults tend to say, wild imagination of children. But, it wasn't until they started having experiences themselves in that house that they finally believed her, and as they were telling the stories of their experiences, which was mostly objects being moved around, hearing noises, that kind of thing within the house, I felt something tap me on the shoulder, and there was nobody standing around me. And I like looked that way, looked this way. It was like, all right, and so I asked my friend, I was like, hey, I was like, did you tap me on the shoulder? She was like, what are you talking about? I was nowhere near you. And I was like, okay. Okay. So I was like, something's trying to get my attention here. So that definitely kept it going for me. Just like needing to know, like, what's going on there. I just, it really just solidified for me that there's something going on that we just don't, pick up all the time with our normal senses, right? So
that's true.
why I had it. Like, I never lost interest. It wasn't until, because I lived in California and I moved out here to Nashville, Tennessee back in 2019. So it wasn't until I got out here that I actually got on the team. But before then, my current husband and I would travel whenever we had vacation. I was always booking spots that were haunted, like I'd go to places that like, I was like, I got to go to New Orleans. I've been to Virginia City. When you said the Old Washroom Club, I was there.
Yep.
I've been to Salem, Charleston, Savannah, Georgia, and anywhere that I can get to back then that I could like get into either doing ghost tours, or if they would allow you to do some part of an investigation, which is nothing like what we really do when we get the spot for ourselves. But it was something for me then. And I almost always had some kind of experience that happened at each and every location, whether, from the beginning, I thought it was more like that I was having empathic experiences, because I would walk into some building, and before the tour guide or anything would say anything, I'd feel it, I'd feel the energy and I was like, oh God, something really bad happened here. Or I'd get like, I'd feel like a pressure in my chest or in my head, or I'd get like a real like dizzy feeling sometimes, just depending on what kind of energies were going on.
Wow.
Do you have more of a mediumship capabilities? Are you able to talk to them as well, or?
I think that like that may be on the verge of emerging. I think that was something I think for a long time that I suppressed and didn't really know it, because I was with my ex, and back then he told me, because we were together for like 20 years, but I was young. I was only, I think, 20 years old when we got together. And so, he kind of told me that it wasn't good to be sensitive.
Oh,
So yeah, so I kind of shut it down, and he wasn't really, we went through so many things, and like he was abusive, and and so it was hard for me to get like open back up, I guess I should say, after I suppressed it for so long. But every time I'm more connected into a location, like things are merging. Before, when I just thought, like I said, I thought I was more just an empath, but as we've been investigating more and more and more, I'm hearing them and nobody else is hearing them, and I'm validated when it comes across on evidence, because
right.
I will hear them. I will literally hear them. I was like,
Mhm.
I'll say to the rest of them, like, did you just hear them? It was loud and clear in my ear. I was like, did you just whisper something to me? And they're like, no. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I heard a voice and it said something to me, so.
And then you play back the EVP, and you get the validation of what you heard. That's a great feeling. It really is.
It is, yeah, and I started working with somebody who, she considers herself a channeler, I guess, and I started working with her, and we're, just trying to bring, open it back up again. I think is the best way.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because you need to. It's really it's a blessing and a curse in the same manner, but it's very cool to be able to have that evidence backing up what you're getting as a medium. So I'm glad to hear that you're allowing that to happen, because it's really validating in the investigations.
Mm-hmm.
Your story sounds very similar to mine, actually, in the sense of ex-husband, married at 19, and little abuse there too. So I've had that as well. But yeah, that's your stories resonates with me very much, as to very similar events as to what I've had happen too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to say that you two are like two peas in a pod.
Yeah, we really are. It's like we're sisters. Ah,
Hey.
another sister.
And we have the red hair.
Yeah, we got the red hair, and it's long.
She can be the fifth member of the group there.
Yay! Your long distance member.
I know. Hey.
With the Sinister Sisters now, there's four of you. So do you have like a historian as well? Or, I mean, what's the position that they kind of take on into the paranormal investigations?
I think we haven't like solidified like each other's roles right now. If we were to lean somewhere like that, then maybe Kate, who runs Rosemont, would lean. She kind of does some of the history. She really likes doing that. So that's something we were talking about going forward. Right now, we all just kind of investigate together, kind of organically. So there's not really a specific role. I think that, in fact, my husband and I are probably the ones who take on like the reviewing the evidence the most. Mm-hmm. But Sam and Kate have both expressed wanting to to do more of that. And we're like, please, because it's a lot of work when
It
you're,
really is. It is. It's long and grueling too.
oh yeah. Cause you're like, for a long time, you're like, okay. We're just like, we listened to one where we had left a recorder running where we went. So we investigated this place called Nashville Typewriter. And so first place is a business who this guy, he basically has this little, it used to be a private residence that he, rents for his business. And he does, he collects and restores and, old typewriters. And one of his clients is actually Tom Hanks, the actor.
Ooh.
So it's pretty cool. And Tom Hanks found him because he collects typewriters as well. But we got to hear that story and got to see the typewriter that he actually sent as a gift to this guy too, and signed it.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. But we were the first to get in there because his friend, he grew up and went to school with Kate, and so they're friends. And she was talking about being a part of our team now, and he was like, "Come in, please investigate my spot because I'm having stuff happen." And so we were like, "Absolutely, we'd love to." And so we left a recorder in there as we went across the street. His landlord owns like a building across the street, and I guess it used to be an old daycare. And I guess like there might be some activity happening in that spot too. There's a bunch of stuff that was hard to investigate. There's no power, there's no water, there's nothing running in that other building. So, and it was just a cluttered mess. So he couldn't really investigate in there properly, but he let us walk through it anyway, just to get a little kind of a feel of that. But while we were gone, we left a recorder in his shop. And when we were just listening to it the other night, and like literally, I think there was 2 spots in like a 20-minute span where we heard something. But we listened to the whole thing through 20 minutes, all the way through, like 20 minutes basically of silence, except for a couple of spots where we heard, some unusual noise. That one sounded like maybe it was a voice, and another was like maybe an object moving.
Oh, wow.
But that was about it in that whole 20 minutes. But that's, for example, like when you're having to listen to audio or watch a recording of a static cam in a room, and it's nothing, but maybe you get like you might get a flash of light and you'll be like, what the hell is that? And then you keep replaying that over and over and over, trying to see if you can like slow it down, if you can debunk it in any way, shape, or form, which we've had to do too. We've gone back to a location just to try and debunk like what lights possibly kept looking like there was like this something like maybe a shadow or something moving across a light multiple times in a row, and we were trying to figure out where was the light source coming from, like what was blocking it out, like, so we had to go back to and get access to the location just to figure that out. But it takes you, if you've got multiple cameras and multiple audio recorders and you're having to review it all.
It takes a while to go through. Yeah. And it's true. It's long. It takes a long time. And it's the one thing about the misconception of investigations that TV puts up there. They think, oh, you walk in a building and here's an hour's worth of content. It's not. It might take a week to get an hour's worth of content to be able to show. So it takes a long time. And you don't walk in and they don't just perform on command, No,
and like I was saying earlier, it may be that you could have one team go in and they never get any activity. You have the next team go in and boom, they get a lot of activity. And that's been our experiences too, when it was myself and Jen, and we would just go in to an investigation. There'd be like, you might all go, like multiple different teams might have a member or two that goes in on one big location because the cost is so expensive.
Right.
get in on that location. And so, you all together combine, and put together this haphazard, team, but you all kind of all do your separate things, investigating on your own time. So if you say, we'll take, this room for an hour and then we'll switch and you can have that, we'll go upstairs and you stay downstairs. And so, we've had that, and they'll say they got no activity and we'll been in that room for like 5 minutes and everything's going off. Like our tripwire's going crazy, the REM pod's going off, we're hearing things. It's like,
Right.
the heck? What do you mean you didn't get anything? Like, crazy. So we always say it's not like where you investigate, but who you investigate with.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. It's true. And obviously, too, being that you're a medium as well, that you're like a little lighthouse, they go straight to you. So that's where are you going to get the activity?
Yeah. They always seem to come but we kind of make it part of, like when we brought on Sam and Kate, we said that our investigation style is very much of like, we're going to go in there and with respect, and we're going to go in there like saying, we want to listen to your stories. We're not here to, try and, antagonize you guys in any way, shape, or form. Like if you don't want to talk to us, that's okay. You don't have to. We're not forcing the situation. We're not walking in saying anything and everything is evil, like, or demonic. Like we never walk into a situation like that. For the most part, we believe they're all human, or we're human spirits. We're just like, if that were us in the same, we'd want somebody to talk to us and treat us like we're just another person, and you want to get to know us, and like, we want the spirit to kind of trust and be able to open up if they want to open up, but we're not going to force anything. And if nothing talks to us, we're like, okay, we'll move on to the next spot and see if somebody else wants to talk. And if you want to follow us to that next spot and see if you want to open up, then we're happy, we're here and we're ready to listen, and we always like, go say we're positive all the way through from beginning to end, and at the end of the night we thank them always. We are always thankful that you communicated with us, because we appreciate that, and we want to let you know you were heard. And at the end of the day, it works. And we haven't had like per se like a extreme, like one of those negative experiences. Do I feel like there might be negative energies out there? Sure, there's negative people in the world, and I think that
ding ding ding,
just like there, and I think leopard can't change its spots, and if you're negative in life, you're probably going to be negative in death. And I think the universe is about balance, right?
Yeah.
They have the dark and the light, and you wouldn't know the light if you didn't have the dark. So I think that exists out there. It's a yin and yang, right?
Right. I agree. And I love it that you're respectful. I mean, it is that, certain shows eschew themselves to be demonic. And, in the amount of years I've been doing this, I think I've run into one that I would classify as a demonic energy. And that's, I don't know how many readings I've done or investigations I've done to be able to tell you how many that is. But one out of all those, I mean, that's very rare. It's very rare that you actually get, a demonic energy. So
it's like a needle haystack, right?
Right. And it's true. I always say the same thing you do. I was like, who you are and how you are in life is exactly the way you're going to be in the afterlife. So it doesn't change much. So if you're a negative Nilly, you're going to be a negative Nilly on the other side too.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I agree very much. So now I noticed that I think wasn't you in Illinois this last week? Yeah, that's Rock Island, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, not too far from me, actually, about a few hours drive. So I
Okay.
wish I would have known that. I would
I
just
know.
would have popped in and come and see you because I'm in Iowa, so I'm just down the state there. So what other now are you just there for conference, Paracon, or
I was, yeah, yeah. I actually go around and go to get booked at different conferences, paranormal conferences, and I usually do some sort of talk or workshop um, on the paranormal. I think this past year I did one focused around like stone tape theory, place memory, stigma theory.
Mhm.
So all has something to do with more of like a residual haunt. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I think that, again, that's just one of the theories of possibility that could be what's causing paranormal. Do I think that there
Mhm.
is both residual and intelligent? Absolutely. I think, again, like you said before, there's layers. There's layers
Mhm.
to activity. But I do think that the land and the buildings contribute to that. I think that they have a way of having a memory, and they
Mhm.
also have a way of retaining the energies and sometimes amplifying those energies depending on the materials that the building's made out of. And a lot in the South here is there's a lot of limestone, and limestone is known for being one of those rocks that can and does amplify and may store energy. Uh,
Mhm.
so we've seen in almost all of the paranormal locations that we've been in investigating, they've all had some sort of access to either limestone, granite, quartz, and also proximity to water. And so it's kind of like that combination of those sort of things. And then you have something, that might be traumatic that happens on the land, whether that's, something that happened like the Civil War, where there's a lot of loss of life, or even in like I went to Virginia. We went to this one paranormal conference that was at this cabin. They call it Cabin on 360 because it's on this Highway 360 there. But it was part of the cabin is on what used to be a Civil War battlefield. And there also is a second house on that same property, and then the house next door we got to investigate both because it's really one guy leases both of those houses and the property that the houses sit on. um, the house next door to the cabin, there was a little girl who was murdered by her
Um,
boyfriend there. And so you know that's something that would leave more of maybe like a stigma theory to it, where there's something like traumatic that happened on within that building that sort of is keeping that energy there.
Trapping it.
Yeah, so that's just some of the things that, yeah, I go to the conferences, and last year I talked about all that was what I chose to do my workshop on. I'm going to continue that, but I'm going to vary it a little bit this coming year. I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to do like a mirror alchemy. So doing,
oh,
yeah, doing a little bit more divination practices, mirror scrying. I'm going to do that kind of workshop. I'm also going to do like a tea leaf reading workshop, teaching people how to do that. And then the last thing I'm going to do is like a table tipping.
wow. Well, you gotta keep us informed because Meeting Moret and I, we love we love doing workshops. We like why not just doing them, but
learning.
going there, or listening. So
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think we've done
I know
quite a
I'll
few
be back in
workshops
Rock
this year.
Island next year. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
cool.
they already requested me back. So I'm like, of course they'll come back. It's not that far of a drive from Nashville, not too far.
That's awesome. Well, I took my girlfriend and I took a tea leaf reading class earlier this year, and I loved it. It was fascinating. And then just to get into the different teas have different meanings to them. So, like green tea is good for money, financial aspects, and learning about that. I loved it. I was like, I got to do more of this, for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun too, because I think no matter if like you're using more of your intuition or if you're actually, doing more, it being more like a psychological therapy, it can really help give you insight. So it could be something that's leaned more towards the intuitive side, or you could go, oh, hey, this can give me a little bit of therapy because I'm really trying to just get to know, like, why am I behaving this way, or why is this happening to me all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And the tea leaves have a way, when you start to learn the symbolism that comes out of it, that you can really put that into practice in your life. It's kind of like pulling a tarot card every
Mm-hmm.
and looking at what that tarot card means. Yeah.
I know when I was in Salem, and I go there quite often, I go to Pentagram owned
Mhm.
by Leanne, and she does tea leaves. She even written some books about tea leaves, and it's very interesting. I just love to give that, working done when I go there.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
think it's so much fun too. I mean, and it's just like a whole nother kind of like look into the past, because I think, like, a lot of those, like even table tipping, tarot reading, even if you're doing, if you're doing like runes or bones or whatever kind of divination you're doing, those have been around for, thousands of years.
yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
it's passed down. Like tea leaves were more read in obviously Asian countries, and it wasn't until like closer to where, like, I think during the time of like gypsies kind of started bringing it out, but then like when it came to the spiritualist movement, they brought and made it more mainstream, I think, back in those spiritualist days when they were doing a whole bunch of like seances and, using pendulums and Ouija boards and, whatever they could get their hands on,
Basically, right. Exactly.
they were all about, which I wish that we would get back into some of that, because I think that they were on kind of the right track.
On target. Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
Because I do think that, yes, that there's some things that science can bring to the table, um, but I think that you can't just go, science is going to give us the answers alone. I
Right.
think there has to, like,
Blending.
yeah, there has to be a blending of it, because I think that they were trying for so long to talking to the other side and starting to get responses that wouldn't be something that we should just go and just like easily cast aside.
Right.
There's a reason they've been
I
doing.
agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree 100%. Yes, I'm glad you said that too, because I tell everybody all the time that, and they just kind of look at me like, yeah, whatever, but, having somebody else say that too, it's kind of nice to, you're like, oh, she knew what she was talking about. Yeah, I see. I get it now. So,
Yeah, exactly. Validation.
yeah, validation. Yeah, everybody needs validation nowadays, They're just like, back in the day, I just believe not pretty much everything, but I just okay, whatever. I have an open mind, you know.
Mhm.
Nowadays, it's just like skeptics, all around you, or somebody who wants to debunk everything that you say. So, yeah, it's harsh.
I
Yeah.
know, I know, but I say that, like, you can be a skeptic but also have an open mind, because I mean, I think in this whole, let's just say, universe, maybe even multi-universe, like a
Mhm.
multiverse, right? Um, anything is possible. Anything is possible. There hasn't been, I mean, the way that even some fringe on the fringe of science, there when they're doing quantum,
Mhm.
discovering, they're finding that a particle can be in two places at the same time. like, and they're also finding a quantum entanglement. They're finding that if there's like a particle, in China, but if it's entangled with another one clear over here in the US, if one reacts here, the other one's going to react the same way.
Mhm.
Okay, how is that possible, right?
Mhm.
I mean, so there are things that we are still discovering. Like we're just on the precipice of
Right.
really
Exactly.
diving in, and I think that it is completely healthy to have like that skepticism, but also like
Keeping an
realize,
open mind.
keep an open mind that anything is possible. Like,
Right.
and until you can prove it otherwise, like, hey, it exists. Like, are we gonna say like the same thing for like Bigfoot or
Yeah.
aliens? I mean, it's all kind of, I know, all wrapped up in the world of paranormal, but
But it's true. But it's very true. I
yeah,
always say, when doing readings, I always preface to say, I get what I get. It may not make sense right now, but it'll make sense maybe later on too. That doesn't mean I'm wrong.
right,
So,
exactly. Yep. And sometimes it takes people even a while, like if they've been in on a reading, right, to like connect the dots. Maybe they don't have the answer, but their relative has the answer because maybe the message wasn't completely just for them, it was for somebody else.
correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
Never know.
100% agree. So where are you going to be going next for the rest of the year? Are you done for this year?
We have one more location locally in November that we're doing at Blythewood Manor, it's called. So it's another historic home. We're very fortunate that, one of our team members, Kate, does have a connection to because she's an executive director of the historic home. She's made, done her networking, and she just puts it out there. Hey, I love, if my team can come in and investigate, so, we just love that too, because that's really nice to have. But
do you typically know? Obviously, you're a paranormal investigator with a twist of the, like I am, a medium. Do you typically like to go into the locations like this particular manor, or are you going to go in blind and not know anything about the history, or do you know the history of it and you're going to just go in to like validate it?
no, I don't know the history of it. Like I said, probably, Kate probably knows everything there is to know about that building up and down right now, but she'll ask if we want to know as we're going over. If not, I like to kind of walk in first and see what I feel, and then if I'm like, okay, tell me,
Sounds like what I would do too. I would do the same thing. I'm typically, unless it's something for one of our shows that we're doing, I usually typically would go in and not know what's going on, but then I'll ask the question like, okay, come on, tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah. And there was we went into, I went with Jen to this place called Whispers Estate. Don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's kind of in Indiana. It's this home, which I full well know that they basically, whoever has the home now may not be doing it, but whoever was before, they opened up like a portal in that place, because I've never seen like so many spirit boards in one location. And there is definitely like offerings that look like offerings to
Oh,
things.
wow.
Had an altar that definitely looked suspect. But when I first walked into the home, I walked into kind of this narrow hallway. There's like a front parlor, and then there's like stairs that go, up to the second floor. But this narrow hallway will take you to the back, which is like a dining room that we're using, that they let paranormal investigators kind of use to put all their equipment and have as their kind of home base while you're there investigating. And so as we got to a part of that hallway, I stopped, and then, my friend Jen was like, "You're feeling something, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yep." And so then, the homeowner's son was there, and he was like going to give us a tour. And, of course, Jen goes, Rachel's feeling something here, and he said, yeah. And she said, did something happen there? And he was like, yeah. Do you want me to tell you now, or do you want me to tell you later? And I was like, no, let's just do it last.
Good.
But it was real. I got like a real, like, it just sunk to the pit of my stomach. Feeling. So I was like, I was like, I think somebody lost their life here, is what it felt like to me. And so at the end of the very end of the tour, he said, okay, here's the spot, right? And he was like, so one of the families that used to live there in the home, there was a little girl, and she caught fire.
Oh.
And she, her nightgown caught fire, and he actually opened up, which I didn't see because there was a door kind of open, and you couldn't see like the door jam because the door was blocking it. It was all the way open. And so he proceeded to close the door, and along the door jam, you could still see where it was burnt there.
Wow.
And he said, that's how hot and intense the fire was. And the little girl, ended up losing her life, but she in the home, but she didn't end up passing in that spot, but she passed away upstairs in her bedroom.
That's a shame.
She's
Terrible.
that is known to be the most active and seen spirit in that house. But yeah, that's what I just walked in, and I was like, oh, right here.
Wow.
Happened. Yeah, it was crazy. So, but it is, like you say, when you find out and they tell you that, you do feel like, okay, I am picking up on something here.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah, sometimes you don't have the full picture,
Right.
yet, but like your body feels it. Your body tells you're like, something happened in the spot.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost a visceral effect you get. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that would be really horrifying to find out. How do you sleep at night sometimes when you get back from investigations? Like something like that, I think I'd be up most of the night just thinking about it.
My tried and true is probably melatonin. And that's because too, I like it. I'm like, over the age of menopause, and so it's like, I have a hard time sleeping anyway, so
do I. Yeah.
it's the worst, and my lifesaver is melatonin. But I don't know. I think after an investigation, especially if you're up that late, I'm exhausted. Like by the end, like paranormal hangover is the reality. Like the next day,
It is.
I feel like, oh, I was like that.
And sometimes, depending on how intense it is, it could last a couple days. For me, it seems like my paranormal hangover doesn't happen the day after. It's the day after that it really hits me. It's almost like a workout where I work out and you're like, I'm okay today. The next day you're kind of okay. You can use your legs and everything. But then the next day you get up, you're like, I can't stand. It usually hits me like the day after. And then I'm wiped. I'm like,
yeah, kind of like it's almost like a muscle memory in a way. Then
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
drained.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions, medium red? Or?
Well, I just have one last question. I just wanted to ask, we've been asking all of our guests, what they feel about the Conjuring house and, what your thought process is on that. And
well, I mean, it's complex. So we'll just say that way. I did get to, when I was up at Rock Island, I got to be in the presence of the Warrens Occult Museum, part of their tour, the Devils on the Run tour. I got to be in front of Annabelle, the real Annabelle doll. I think a lot of that, the actual, and the mirror from the Conjuring the most recent one.
Right.
But I didn't pick up so much anything on like Annabelle or the mirror. It was this really obscure artifact that they had, that I had to ask. They have, they bring people there that kind of like security, making sure nobody's touching any of the objects in there. And there was a guy standing over by, it's another doll, but this thing didn't look like a typical doll. And the feeling I was getting off of it was definitely very dark. And so I said, hey, can you tell me more about the doll? And it had a little plaque that says the shadow doll. So I was like, what is the shadow doll? And so it's, he basically said that it was built using dark magic. And it's the only thing in the Warrens Occult Museum that has been known to actually kill somebody.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's what I got like the feeling off of. And I didn't know it until I asked him. I'm like, what's the story with this one? And he was like, this is the most dangerous object in the museum. It's the one that killed somebody. And I was like, killed how? And they were like, well, it's the only doll has like human remains in it.
Oh,
And
sounds like the doll that Nico had.
Yes. My cousin had a doll with teeth and hair.
Exactly. That's what this had. It had teeth and hair, and it also had human animal remains as well with it. So and what he said is that, the intended victim of whoever, created the doll and wanted to use the dark magic on sent like a picture of the doll to this person, and they ended up dying.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like that powerful. So I was just like, that's the only thing that really spoke, to me. It was like, yeah, this thing is not to be messed with.
Right.
But everything else. And I mean, I had an interesting conversation with the like the minister. They had like a preacher there who I guess travels with them, was involved on investigations with the Warrens. And, they also had some religious, he called them paranormal, but good religious objects. A splinter that came off supposedly Jesus's cross.
Oh, wow.
They would take that and use that in investigations, which I was like, this is very, very interesting. And then Father Pio, who was Padre Pio, he was inducted as a saint. But he was the one that had like confirmed what the church confirmed as stigmata of having one of the only few cases that they recognize. And they had like just a drop of his blood on something that came from like his stigmata wound. And he said they take that with them on investigations.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
But
to talk about with we're having the grandson of the Warrens to come on again for the third time, Chris McKennell. So he'll be on in a few weeks. We have to discuss this with him too as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, bring those items up. I'm sure you're aware of it. But I think, unfortunately, I've had conversations with a couple of people who have, worked with the Warrens. Have talked with one guy recently. He's written a few different books, and on different paranormal investigations. And he had where he got to sit down and talk with Ed Warren for a while. But he said, he, as well as another guy who I was at Cabin in 360 with, he was one of the investigators who was trained by the Warrens. I think that, unfortunately, not everything that is put out there that is glorified about them is necessarily, the truth of really about it. And I think, unfortunately, people might have been out for, notoriety,
Mhm.
and doesn't mean that there weren't gifts that they
Right.
have, but there's a whole thing of like, using your gifts for good and
Betterment. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think, it's hard because I think that there's mixed emotions there, but I think that the Conjuring house itself, I hope it ends up finding a home where, there's not going to be some crazy lady who's who's
Right.
running it. And maybe she got that way because of the house. I don't know. But
Well, there's some suspicions on that. I mean, there's been a few people that have been talking about it as well, about that too, in the sense of like how she was before she took possession of the house, and then during the possession of the house, and then towards the end when she was losing the house. It leads itself to believe that there is some maybe attachments, perhaps, or even possession because of the erratic nature of her behavior. It's not it's very uncharacteristic of her prior to. So all of a sudden something happened in the midst of this. And yeah, I'm wondering the same thing. So
Mhm.
on the same page as that.
Yeah.
Somebody that takes over the house has to be very careful.
Yeah.
And, I like the idea of them being able to make it affordable for everyone. I do like that aspect of it, for the aspect of science, for validation, for continuing paranormal activity, things like that. I like the idea of the educational part of it. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think that would be worthwhile. But again, like, I think like you touched on, that it should be affordable to be able to do so. Because a lot of
right.
these locations, they find out that they can make some money at it. And,
Mhm.
I know that happened kind of with the Velasca Axe house, that, they ended up, somebody bought it and took control of it, and, kicked people out that were there for a long time. And, and
Yeah.
that a lot of, people in the paranormal community knew for as being, very, highly respected individuals. And then this company would just come in, purchase this property, and then they were going to try and, get as much money as they could out of it.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Chris McKinnell, he talks a lot about his grandparents. He has a different workshops that he does, probably once a month or so. But he talks a lot about the Warren cases and everything, about his cases too as well. If you ever get a chance to,
Yeah,
you
talk about that.
should listen into one of his classes because it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
See
Well,
what
we have a little bit past than an hour, but we had a great conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I'm hoping to see you next year sometime.
yeah, that would be wonderful.
Come close by me next time, and I would know, oh, yeah, I got to go now.
For sure. That would be wonderful to see in person.
But I just want to tell everybody to have a good night, to be blessed, happy Samhain, be safe, and many blessings to you. And subscribe, like, and share. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.